Well, Nick Collier again. It's story time, and this story is actually an addition to last week's story. And if you haven't seen last week's story, probably a good idea to go back, look down below, and you'll see the link to that story. And this one, we start with me being dumped into the mental hospital at Agnew State Hospital, and I'm 18. I got there on a police hold, and that story is, of course, what happened last week. So, I kind of get dropped into the middle of this big hall with about 50 guys, and they're all in different array of mental health, from a young kid that had taken acid one time and went off the deep end and was completely off the deep end, and he'd been that way for a number of years, to a regular Joe that was hanging out in the hospital because he couldn't handle being out in the real world, and everything in between. And this is where I met Merv Kinkle, who was a heroin addict and gave me insight on how heroin addicts act and what they do to get other people addicted so that they can have a source of income, which saved my life. So anyhow, I'm there for about, I don't know, 6 or 8 days. I hook up with this young kid that seems mentally reasonably stable. He's also there on a police hold, and he and I, both of us are just chomping at the bit to get out of that place, because it's a little disorienting, to say the least. But it's safe. All of the dangerous mental patients were upstairs in the danger ward, and everybody down below was pretty calm. There was this one guy real old guy, and all he would do all day long would be to stand at the window and look at the sun, and it was like he was praying to the sun. And if the sun moved to another window, he'd go over to that window, and he'd follow the sun all day long, every day. And I talked to one of the attendees, and they said he's been doing that for 30 years. Okay. So anyhow, we were chomping at the bit to get out of there. I just wanted to go out on the yard and cruise around the facility. And I kept telling him, I kept saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm committed to being here. I'm not going anywhere. Why don't you just let me go outside, and I'll come back in, and I'll go get a job outside, because most of the people that had didn't have police holds were able to go outside and go to work somewhere on the facility. Well, they weren't seeing, that you got a police hold. There's no getting out of here. You're here for 90 days, and that's just the end of it. So, being the rambunctious young man that I was, I wasn't putting up with that crap. So I just, me and this guy, and I can't remember his name, he wanted to go back east. And we just, came up with a plan. And, we scoped out the whole area from the inside, and figured out that in the laundry room, the screens on the windows were literally attached with with screws. And so, and I worked in the kitchen, and I said, okay, I'm gonna, pocket a knife, a butter knife, and we're gonna come back and see if we can undo those screws. And sure enough, the screws weren't even tight. So we had this whole plan going, and we had a bird dog, and we had made sure that, nobody was going to be walking down the hall to the laundry room. And so one evening, we just decided, okay, today's the day, and we unscrewed the screws, opened the screen up, opened the window, and jumped out. And our bird dog, or a couple actually, kept the attendees at the far end of the building. Jumped out, we ran around the building, and first obstacle we came to was about a 20-foot chain link fence. So, that was no problem. I'm young and I'm strong, and so climb up the 20-foot fence, flip over the top, climb back down the other side, and run out into the fields. And I'd say there was probably, maybe 500 yards of fields around the entire perimeter. And so we're getting ready to we run across the lawn, and that was really easy. And we get to the field, and they had literally plowed the field, a rough plow. So there were mounds about this tall, and not in a row either. It was just rough plowed. So you were literally climbing over and down into, and up and over and down into these clods. And it was not easy pickings here. So, we struggled our way across there, and they did it on purpose, of course, to slow down any escapees. But, hey, we were young and strong. No 500 yards of rough plowed field was going to slow us down. So we just kept going and going and going, and the sirens hadn't gone off yet, so nobody figured out that we were gone. And it was dark. It was winter time, and night fell fairly early. So we run across this field. We finally get across it, and I'm exhausted at that point. But we're moving forward. And literally we have not Levi, but kind of a dungaree pants and shirt on, denim, and light denim on top of it. And I'm 18. I didn't think, hey, maybe we're going to need a jacket. So, and of course, inside the mental hospital, you didn't need the jacket because they had a controlled environment, and so there were no jackets to get anyhow. So about this time, we're starting to get a little cold, but we keep moving, and we drop down into this little ravine, and we decide, okay, we're going to follow the ravine down to the bay, because Agnew Hospital was at the very southern tip of the San Francisco Bay. And so we decided, okay, that'll get us going north. So we turn left and we start down this little ravine, and just about that time, all the sirens go off. The entire Agnew Hospital lights up, and the escapees have escaped. So, we're, 2 sheets gone. And so we're kind of working our way down this orchard. Couldn't tell what kind of orchard it was because, of course, it was winter. And just, probably a mile's worth of orchard. And we crossed 237, which was the main highway that led from Sunnyvale to Mission San Jose. We crossed the highway. We dropped back down into the into the little ravine, and we continue on. Oh, for, I don't know, a good hour. And I'm starting to get pretty cold at that point. And so we come to an area where there's a couple of buildings. We can see them off in the distance, some lights, and we think, okay, we'll go to that direction and see if we can find a payphone. I had a dime on me, and back then a payphone was a dime, and I was going to call my girlfriend and have her come get us. So we're coming up on this little group of buildings with a few lights, and sure enough, it's Alviso, which is this little dinky town at the very base of the San Francisco Bay. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the San Francisco Bay or at the southern end of it, but all of the smells of the ocean were condensed at the southern end of the San Francisco Bay. Well, the smells of the ocean and all of the pollution that everybody had dumped into the ocean just found its way down to the south end of the bay, and it stunk. Oh man, it stunk so bad. I mean, it was a joke, because Milpitas was pretty much the joke of the area, at least at that time, because it smelled so bad. You drive down the road and you go, oh, hey, oh yeah, we're in Milpitas. And then, of course, Milpitas was on the eastern end of the south part of the bay, and then Alviso was on the south part of the bay, and then Sunnyvale was on the other side. But the prevailing winds always came from the west to the east, which means Sunnyvale never got the smell. Anyhow, so we come up on this little dinky town of Alviso, and you could understand why nobody lived there, because it's just stunk. And here is a bar right in the middle of town. There's nothing else open except for this bar. And me and my buddy come over to the bar, and we figured, well, and there was no payphone, of course, but we figured, well, maybe there's a payphone inside. So I had the dime, and I was going to call my girlfriend, so he waited outside, and I went inside, and I asked if there was a payphone, and the guy said, yeah, over there in the corner. And of course, we're in Agnew State Hospital denims, and everybody recognizes that. I didn't think about it, but that's what just happens. So I get to the payphone. I call my girlfriend. I say, okay, well, we're over in Alviso, come and get us. And we go outside, and it's freezing cold, and we're not sure what to do, because we know it's going to be at least 30 minutes before she gets there. So we decide, okay, let's just go across the street, and there's a kind of a little meadow, which I'm sure by now there's several buildings. Anyhow, there was a little meadow, and it was full of ice plants. And we thought, okay, we'll just go over there and sit in the ice plants and just wait for her to show up. So we're sitting in the ice plants, and the ice plants are, I don't know, they're probably 1.5 to 2 feet tall. So, and we're just sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden, wham! A bunch of cop cars show up. And so we both just drop back on our backs and lay in the ice plants. It's like 1.5 feet tall, and we're completely hidden. And the cop cars pull up, and there must have been 6 of them. And they pull up, and they come to a screeching halt, and they get out of the car, and they run in the bar, and there's so much activity going on. And we're sitting over there. I mean, we couldn't have been 30 feet from the cars. And we're laying there and just kind of lifting up a little bit, just to kind of look out a little bit to see what's going on. And these cops are like, it's the Keystone Cops, I swear. They're all running all over town, they're knocking on doors, and they're just making sure the escapees aren't around. And, we're laying down there just kind of hanging out. Now, of course, nowadays, if that had happened, there'd be a helicopter over the top and they would have caught us right away. But they didn't think to go out into the ice plants because there was moisture in the air and the ice plants were a little bit wet. And the cops didn't want to get their pants wet. So we lay there for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. My girlfriend shows up. They jump on her. They harass her until, she can't stand it. And, they probably spend a half an hour messing with her. And, she's a good-looking young woman, so every cop wants to do his little thing with her. And I'm sitting over there watching this. And, I'm just laughing to myself because, every cop wants to hit on her. Finally, they let her go, and they're writing up stuff, and they're yakking and talking and having a good time. And finally, at one point, they all pack it in and disappear. And I'm laying there, and my buddy says, "Okay, let's get out of here." I said, "Well, we should wait, because if they had any gumption at all, they would have left somebody hanging out just to see what would happen." So we hung out for about another half hour. And sure enough, they didn't leave anybody behind. They all packed it in and left. So we just laid there and watched and waited for some kind of activity, and there was none. And the bar shut down, and everybody in the bar went home, and the town was it was like 3 buildings and a bunch of little houses, but 3 downtown buildings, and the town basically closed up. So we lifted up and cautiously looked around and made sure that nobody was hanging out waiting for us. And there was some railroad tracks, and we decided, well, let's just walk down the railroad tracks. They'll go north. They're going to swing around the east side of the bay, and I knew those railroad tracks, and I knew what they were going to do. I mean, I didn't know them personally, but I'd seen trains on them. So we just jumped on the railroad tracks and started walking. And now it's about, I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock at night, maybe midnight, and it's starting to get really cold. And, of course, we didn't bring any matches, we didn't bring jackets, we didn't bring nothing. So, in order to stay warm, we had to walk fast. We were just like walking fast to keep moving. And we walked, it was probably about 9 or 10 miles from Alviso to Fremont. And it took the rest of the night. And about halfway up the railroad tracks, it was probably 3 in the morning. We're freezing our butts off. We have no idea how to get warm. And we're just plugging along, trying to go. Actually, I'm thinking, it took all night to get to Fremont. So I'm guessing maybe it was 20 miles. So at one point, we come upon this settlement. And the railroad track is right here, and down here are the mud flats. And when the tide comes in, it's water. When the tide goes out, it's probably, 500 yards of mud. And this little settlement was on stakes. And there was like these little small shed-like buildings. There probably were 30 or 40 of them stretched out into the mud flats. And it was pitch dark out. I think there was just a slight bit of a moon, just a little bit, enough to kind of see the railroad tracks, and and you could see the freeway off to the side. You know, it was probably a mile or so away. But as we come up on this little settlement, I realized that it's got planks to walk from the railroad tracks out to the first building, and then each building after that had planks, and that was their sidewalk. And as I said, there was like 20 or 30 buildings, and I actually painted a picture of it. I'll So, I really wanted to go out and explore it, but we're freezing our butts, and we couldn't slow down. And in fact, at one point, the one plank that went across from the railroad tracks over to the first building, I just kind of started to walk on it, and the board just gave way. It just bent. And I was like, this isn't going to work. So we left it. And I promised myself that I would come back to those buildings because they were so intriguing. And I never did. So we're walking through the night when we get all the way through. And dawn is breaking and it's starting to warm up a little bit. And we're freezing our asses. And all of a sudden we come upon a settlement, and it's the Fremont train station. And we walk in the train station. I got a second dime, luckily. Or maybe I didn't have a second dime. I called collect. And so I called my girlfriend and I said, okay, we're in Fremont. Come pick us up. Oh, and she just jumps in the car and comes on over. Fremont's like 20 minutes away. And we're sitting in the station and just, getting warm. And she shows up. We go have some breakfast, and we take my buddy to I think a bus station, and get him on a bus going east. And she takes me home, and we have it was like makeup sex. It had been 10 days. I'm a young, horny male, and so we just, the next couple of days, we just jumped on each other like bunnies, and that was really good, and I needed it. And then I realized, I've proven my point. I made my point. I can get out of that place anytime I want. So let's go back and do the last 3 months. So she drives me back to Agnew, and I walk in the front door, and I walk into the secretary, and I say, well, I'm back. And the whole place freaks out. And they drag me into the back room, and they're like questioning me and interrogating me, and and I'm like, I'm back. I'm here. No, we're gonna send you to jail. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I really screwed up here. Finally, after about 45 minutes, the guy he says, okay, I'll give you a second chance, but no more screw-ups. Okay. So they take me back to the ward, plop me on the ward, and I spend the next 90 days making as much trouble as I could make for the idiots who were running the place. Now, I'm not saying all of them were idiots, because there were some attendees that were great. But the head nurse, if you've ever seen something's making a squeaky noise. Anyhow, it might be the skunk that's under the table. I've had a skunk for about, I don't know, a week now. Come in here and it's like, I can barely breathe. But, it's under the floor, so what can I do? Anyhow, where was I? Oh, yeah. If you've ever watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I was McMurphy, just causing all kinds of grief for the head nurse, and the head nurse was the head nurse on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She was a piece of work, and there's more stories about that part, but for now, that's the end. This is Nick Collier checking out.